It all started on a quiet Saturday morning. The kind where you're just trying to enjoy the peace, maybe sip some coffee while the birds are doing their thing. I'd finally done something I'd talked about for years. I floated my custom-built houseboat into the lake on my own property. That's right, my lake, smack in the middle of my ranch. Nothing too crazy, just a little dream I had coming to life. But within 10 minutes, things took a wild turn I didn't see coming. Out of nowhere, I hear sirens. At first, I thought maybe someone had gotten into trouble down the road. Nope, they were for me. Turns out, the local HOA, yeah, that group, had called the cops, said I was disturbing the neighborhood. Keep in mind, my ranch is several acres wide, and the lake is completely within my property lines. But somehow, floating a houseboat got them riled up enough to get law enforcement involved. The officers were just doing their job, but you could tell even they were confused. Now, here's where it gets interesting. One of the HOA board members came storming down the gravel path in her golf cart like she was running the county. She started throwing around terms like unauthorized structure and community standards, even though none of that applied to me. I tried to explain politely, but she wasn't having it. And that's when something clicked in my mind. Not frustration, not anger, but curiosity. See? What they didn't know is that I'd recently been looking into waterfront property nearby, just for fun. And 10 minutes after they tried to shut me down, I made a phone call that would flip the entire situation on its head. Within days, I was the proud new owner of the very marina their HOA had been trying to protect for years. Suddenly, the power dynamics shifted and, let's just say, things got real quiet after that. But trust me, that was just the beginning. What came next, nobody saw coming. Let me back up a bit so this all makes more sense. I bought this ranch a couple years ago. It's a big piece of land over 40 acres with a natural lake right in the center. The kind of place where you feel totally disconnected from the noise. I built the houseboat myself as a personal project, something I'd always wanted to do. It wasn't flashy or loud, just a peaceful floating cabin with solar panels, a small deck, and a hammock for weekend naps. Nothing about it screamed problem. But apparently, the HOA next door didn't like that I was doing something different. And on my own terms, technically, my property isn't even part of their association. The lake doesn't connect to theirs, and I don't use their roads or shared spaces. But that didn't stop a few board members from treating me like I was under their rule. Over the months, I'd gotten passive-aggressive letters about things like fence height, visible structures, even the kind of gravel I used for my driveway. I usually just ignored them. I figured it was just bored people with too much time. But once the houseboat floated in, they decided to escalate. The lady who showed up that morning, Marjorie, I found out later, acted like she was guarding the crown jewels. She kept saying things like, "This sets a dangerous precedent, and we need to maintain the community's image." She even tried to tell the officers that my lake affected their water quality, which made zero sense. I wasn't connected to their water system at all. It was like they were just making up rules as they went. That's when I started wondering, why were they so worried about my lake? Why did a floating houseboat send them into full meltdown mode? It didn't add up. So I started asking questions, digging a little deeper. And what I found out about the HOA, their history with the marina, and a few quiet land deals. Well, let's just say, there was a lot more going on behind their pretty gates than anyone wanted to admit. And that marina I bought, it wasn't just some casual purchase, it was the key to something way bigger than I expected. After I bought the marina, things started shifting fast, but not in the way I expected. At first, I thought the HOA would back off once they realized I now owned the only public access point to their beloved lake. But instead of cooling down, they got more aggressive. I started noticing strange things, random inspections near my fence line, drones flying a little too close to the houseboat, even a guy parked across from my property line taking photos. None of it was outright illegal, but it was enough to feel like someone was watching. The marina itself wasn't much to look at, just a few old docks, a small boat shop, and a gravel lot. But what mattered was where it was. It sat right next to their gated community, and for years, the HOA had been trying to buy it quietly to control access. Turns out, the previous owner had refused every offer they made, said he didn't like the way they operated, so when I called him with a cash offer, he didn't hesitate. I had no idea at the time that I was stepping straight into a battle that had been brewing long before. I showed up. A few locals started filling me in. The HOA had been trying to turn their community lake into a members-only retreat, but state water laws made that tricky. They couldn't block public access unless they owned all the entry points, and I had just bought the last one. That's when I realized the houseboat wasn't really the issue. It was just the spark. What they really feared was losing control. Meanwhile, I kept getting letters now from their lawyers claiming my marina renovations violated some environmental code. I hadn't even started renovations yet. They were clearly grasping at straws. I even got a visit from a man claiming to represent concerned residents. He suggested I sell the marina to a local trust and offered double what I paid. No name, no paperwork. Just a handshake offer. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't about property lines or peace and quiet. It was about power, money, and keeping certain people out. And they were willing to go further than I thought. The pressure really started building after I turned down that mystery man's offer. Within a week, I got hit with a surprise county inspection, something about unauthorized commercial use. It didn't make sense. The marina had been there for decades, and I hadn't even opened it up for business yet. Just a few repairs. Cleaning up old debris, fixing the dock supports. Still, the inspector showed up with a clipboard and a serious tone, asking all the wrong questions. When I asked who filed the complaint, he just said it came from a community organization. No prizes for guessing who that was. Meanwhile, things at the ranch got weirder. My mailbox was smashed one morning. A trail camera caught someone sneaking near the back edge of my property at night. I filed reports, but there wasn't much the sheriff could do without catching anyone in the act. Every day felt like a quiet standoff. I was trying to stay calm, trying to stay legal. But you could feel the tension rising like something was about to break. Then came the community meeting. I wasn't invited, obviously, but a friend who lived nearby managed to slip me a recording. And let me tell you, Ute was wild. Marjorie, the same woman who tried to run me off my own land, was practically shouting about outside influence and preserving community standards. She called my marina a threat to property values and warned the board about an influx of strangers. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't even just about boats anymore. This was about control, exclusivity, and keeping people out who didn't fit their picture-perfect idea of the neighborhood. But the part that really got me, they were planning to petition the county to have my property rezoned. They pulled it off. It could block the marina, restrict what I could do on my own land, maybe even drive me into court. That's when I knew this wasn't just a fight over a floating houseboat or a dock. It was a full-on campaign. And they were throwing everything they had at me, hoping I'd fold before I saw what was really at the center of it all. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Just when I thought I had a clear picture of what I was up against, something happened that flipped the whole situation on its head. A package showed up at my gate no return address, just my name handwritten on the label. Inside was a thick manila envelope filled with old documents, faded maps, and copies of emails. At first, I thought it was junk mail or some legal scare tactic, but as I started flipping through it, my heart sank. What I had in my hands wasn't just paperwork. It was proof of something bigger. Hidden land agreements, backdoor deals, and A very quiet arrangement between the HOA board and a development company that had been trying to quietly buy up lakeside land for a luxury resort project. That's when it all clicked. My floating houseboat, my Marine U, wasn't just a nuisance to them. I was in the way. If they could push me out or shut down access, the developers could move in clean, and the HOA board. They weren't just worried about community standards. They stood to make a lot of money if the deal went through. It wasn't public yet, and it looked like they were trying to keep it that way until the rezoning went through. But with my Marina sitting at the edge of the lake, their whole plan was jammed up. The documents even included a few internal messages, one between Marjorie and a developer contact, where she mentioned handling the dock issue. That was me. I was the issue. And they'd been working behind the scenes to make sure I'd fold under pressure before any of this came to light. Suddenly, everything took on a new weight. The drone surveillance, the fake environmental claims, the lawyer letters, they weren't random. They were part of a much bigger strategy to scare me off my land before their deal became public. I was no longer just defending a houseboat or a peaceful marina. I was standing in the way.